You're listening to the Freio
Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Freio Music Podcast. In this episode, I sit down with Aric Rudnick, aka Aphasia. Aric is a talented young producer, but it's very clear that he has been working on the craft of being a musician, of producing music for more than a decade. His selection of sounds and his careful attention to detail when shaping sounds really shines through. His mixes are clean, and he reveals how he's able to achieve such unique sounds, which involves him creating his own sample packs. So stay tuned to learn more about that. This interview is a little bit longer than some of the others, so sit back, relax, get yourself a drink or some food, some water, and enjoy this episode of the Freio Music Podcast featuring Aphasia.
My real name's Aric Rudnick. Kind of a weird name, actually. That's my legal name. My artist name's Aphasia. I came up with the name really interested in brain science, actually. So aphasia is a medical term for when you can't actually speak and you can just make noises. So it's an unfortunate thing a lot of people deal with.
Is this a lifelong thing, or is this like a temporary
I think it can be
condition?
Both. I'm not 100%. It's funny, I use the word for my artist, but I'm not 100%.
Well, you're not a brain scientist, I assume.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I would never claim to be, but it is it's a condition where I think it can be both, like, you know, temporary or permanent, where you just can't formulate language, but it's in their mind. As far as I understand, it's where it's in your mind. They could speak, but like there's a disconnect in the brain where you can't actually make the right sounds and get it out. The reason I chose that name was that definition of the syndrome kind of actually aligned with ways I have felt from certain music, where I really could just make sounds to react to it, but I didn't have a good way to articulate what it was making me feel. So it became kind of like a direction or a goal for me as in my music is to try to blow people's minds in a way and leave you speechless. So it's kind of like a clever way to say that.
So your goal is aphasia for the listener.
Temporary. Yes. Okay. I want you to be able to speak and have friendships and stuff, which is tough if you can't speak. But no, at least temporarily, I want you to be kind of like stuck just feeling things and not being able to, that's just the idea behind the name, is the kind of a take on that syndrome.
That's it. That's very interesting. And I think music is an interesting language, for lack of a better word, because it really crosses cultures and traditional languages, but it doesn't necessarily translate to English or any language for that matter. It is standalone way of expressing yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of music, why certain artists can get followings all over the world instantly, no matter their background or anything. It's an interesting way to express. There's certain ways you can make people feel through music that no amount of articulation or speeches or anything could cause you to feel. I think that's what's cool about music is I've had sensations and mental reactions to music that I just could never imagine getting from another format, whether a movie or like a speech or any kind of articulated way of communicating information. It's a weird way. It's a really weird and cool way to transmit information. Music, it's crazy. It's a lot of the unspoken feelings even psychologists can't find ways to express in words that you can transmit to someone through a song. It's pretty cool. I think that's why one of the reasons I'm so addicted to making and listening to it. Honestly, it has a very niche way of affecting the mind that I'm like endlessly intrigued by. So I think, that's for me one of the main drivers for music. is you tap into, I think, deeper parts of people's mind. Thing with words, like if you listen to someone giving a speech about anything, science, something scientific, something philosophical, your ego is able to listen to that and break it down in ways that make sure you still feel okay at the end. Music, I've noticed, kind of just goes right past the ego. Like the ego can't say anything about music because there's nothing analytical to say about it. It's just vibrations that are somehow making you feel different. So it kind of can, for me personally, I've noticed music dive in and cause me to become like introspective about things I've done to people in my life, or where if they confronted me about it, maybe my ego would say, no, bro, you're good, you were cool. Whereas a certain song might have made me think about it and feel about it in a way where like my ego was powerless. So I think I've seen music also bolster my ego too, make me feel like I'm cool or I know everything, and give me kind of like a confidence boost that I didn't deserve. But I think that's something about music that's cool, is it meaningful music, which is subjective to say, but music that's meaningful for me has gone past my ego and made me just think about things I needed to think about or feel things that I should have felt. So yeah, I don't know, I think that's why it's more of a deeper thing than other things that happen in my life.
So let me kind of elaborate on that, or tell me if I'm going astray from what you meant by what you said. But in a way, music, you don't have, your guard's not up. And with speech, you can be on your guard, or you could get defensive within a couple of words, or you just start tuning somebody out.
Yes.
Whereas music, it just hits you.
Yes. Very good way to put it. Well, and I think it's good to have an ego reaction to people speaking, because people are full of it.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are either trying to deceive, or people have something selfish in mind. With music, there's none of that kind of content. So that reaction is invalid to like analyze it a whole lot, because it's like, it's just sounds. I mean, the sounds don't, there's nothing for that part of your brain to do with it. So yeah, it can cut past that. You're right though. Yeah. I mean, your guard isn't up in a way. Yeah.
So tell me about your first musical memory.
Ooh. It was my mom playing Enya. You know Enya?
Oh yeah, I know Enya.
Yeah. It's actually beautiful, honestly beautiful music. I think
there's no question. Orinoco flow, straight to the soul.
Yes. No, I think the thing about, because that was one of my earliest memories. My mom would help me sleep. Like we'd all fall asleep. That was like, I think her hack on raising us, is if we got to be a little rowdy, she would like put us on the couch with some Enya, and we'd all be snoring. And I think it's funny you bring that up. It's probably one of the main drivers for why I like the music I do. I listen to a lot of ambient music, a lot of music with no drums, just pads and like, just spaces, really, like soundscapes and stuff. Because Enya was a lot of that. It was a lot of like really smooth like strings and then voice right over that, and it created this incredible soundscape. And I would fall asleep to that. My growing brain is hearing it as it's sleeping. I mean, I think that's a big part of why I am into the music I am. So probably one of my earliest memories, if not the earliest, was that.
And what age were you roughly?
5, 6, like really young, like diving as far back into my archives of my mind as I can. It's like me on the couch listening to Enya, and we grew up kind of in the country in Oregon. So, and I'm lucky. I'm honestly really lucky. I had a really good childhood. Like, I'm not afraid to say that. I think it's really sad a lot of people don't have that or can't say that. Mm-hmm. I think it's a big reason we're either scared, or a lot of people that are not the best to other people. It's a lot of times a reflection of how they were treated as a child. So I'm really lucky to have that. So like, I had a good childhood. I was listening to Enya, and I was in like kind of the wilderness. It all kind of built in who I am in a way. I was part of the foundation of why I think I want music that, some of my music is a lot about peace because of that. Causing peace, I think, is a big part of some of my music. I wouldn't say all my music is I want people to be peaceful, even though I do. Some of my music wants you to have fun, like really get out there and have fun, which is a little bit different vibe. But so Enya, like some worship music. Like I was raised in a Christian family, and so there was like worship music going on. But I think the most distinct was that ambient type Enya. I love choir type vocals. Some of my music you might hear.
Were you in any of the worship?
Just as
singing?
a drummer, as a young kid, I played djembe.
Okay.
And like drum set with my brother. My brother and I would play like rock music together. So that's kind of my foundation. That was more when I turned like 9, 10. I was always banging on the table.
Okay.
And they like kind of figured out I might like drums. So I got into that. But yeah, peaceful music is kind of when I get real back in there, is really calm music, really, and like Enya had all those ocean sounds and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That whole like ambient vibe was back in there real far.
That's a great foundation to build off of. So tell me about when you first started playing music. Perhaps it was with your brother when you were playing drums. When did you first perform, or like what was your first performance in your own mind?
It was a talent show with my brother. Yeah, we were like, it was a middle school.
Okay.
Like a school talent show.
Yeah.
We played, I think we played it was a Mission Impossible theme song.
Nice.
And it was cool. Everyone was like, we had got all these reactions. It was like crazy for my little young ego to get on stage and play a really easy drum loop on a set with my brother and then get all this attention for it. But it was cool. Me and my brother had a lot. I mean, really more enjoyable than even the show was just with my brother in the back room. Just we'd jam for hours. But that was the first performance. It was like a talent show. It was fun.
What did he play?
Electric guitar.
Okay.
Yeah, and he to this day he still plays. He has this band, Bad Pacifist, in Oregon. They're actually playing this Tuesday. But so he's still in music, which is cool. We both still do it.
Nice.
But I think that would be my first performance. That obviously wasn't electronic music. First time I played electronic music was out in the woods in Bend. I was about 18 years old.
Okay.
Some kids with a generator out in the middle of nowhere, no permit. Yeah. It was fun.
Public lands party or something?
Yeah. Humble beginnings. It was fun though.
That's great.
Yeah.
So tell me about that time in Oregon, that first time setting up, with friends and your electronic setup. What did you have at
When
that time?
I first did electronic music? Well, I mean, I started with computer music really when I was like 11 or 12. I can't get that exactly right in my mind when it was, but it was like 11 or 12. We had a computer, like we're out in the country. So we had this computer like in the other room that no one really used. It was like my dad's old work computer. And I ended up, getting on there and one day Googling like free music software. Basically, I found this little program called Mad Tracker 2. Just really unintuitive. A lot of people look at like Ableton and get really like, whoa, this is a lot. This thing was, I mean, the mother of unintuitive software.
And this was a PC that you were on?
Yeah, on a PC, free program. And I would just, out of boredom and curiosity, play around in here, try to get sounds out of this program. I was inspired a lot at that age, like 10 and 11, by a lot of that early trance music, that old school, like early 2000s, late 90s trance music, like Armin van Buuren, all those guys. I really liked. For some reason, my mind was really obsessed with the different type of melodic synths people were coming out with, the glidey ones that would slide between notes. I kind of liked the big saws and stuff for a while, just seeing them fill up the space. I just had no idea how these sounds were being made. I think combined with being kind of a nerd and then the curiosity of that, I started just going into that Mad Tracker program randomly at home when I would be done with chores and stuff. If I wasn't playing video games or something, I'd be in there plucking notes in and making weird songs. So, I mean, I started with computer music real young. As a hobby, like I was bored and I wanted to know how these sounds came out and had fun. Like there were some nights I remember staying up real late on one synth patch, just playing with it, just like evolving one sound, adding reverb, getting all crazy with the sound, kind of blowing my mind that I was really happy I could get that far, even like playing with synth, because I just, again, was super curious. I had no idea, what a drum sounds like. You can see the drum in your head. What a guitar sounds like, but certain synth sounds, I was like, that's crazy.
Where is that coming from?
Yeah, like as a young kid, I was like, that's just wild. Like half the people don't even ask where it comes from. Like, I want to know.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't want to just like push a button on a keyboard and have it play. I wanted to see like all the knobs and what they all do and all this. So I got into making sounds with VST or like synth plugins in this Mad Tracker program. It could host plugins. That was the coolest thing. It was not a good software, but you could put all those third-party plugins in it. So I got to play around with like professional stuff in a little free program. So that I did that for years. I just made music randomly at my parents, at the farm. It was like a farm that I grew up on. And it was fun. Helped me with, it was like I had a lot of fun just playing around. Then I played that first show. It was, small. You just played a few people out in the woods, your friends pretty much. But I got, it was cool. I got to go out and as I got older, like 17, 18, my friends started to be more about music and less about just other things in my life. I kind of started to notice that this was really what I think I want to do. And so after like 16, 17, where a lot of my friends in high school were about sports and other things I was into, which was cool too, started to be more about music. And then I started meeting people and they started throwing these parties out in the woods and I started getting little slots to play. Nothing crazy, but a lot of fun.
Were you nervous that first time?
I think so, but I was also in a pretty interesting place in my life of like not caring. I think a lot of us go through that when we turn 18. We think we know a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And we kind of just go for it. But yeah, there was definitely nervousness. I was, practicing my set a lot and trying to be all ready for it. But I also was poor, so I had the most janky setups you could imagine. Just these little sketchy laptops that could barely boot and all. It just barely happened back when I was that old. But I mean, it was good times.
So what equipment were you working with? You had a laptop?
Yeah, I've always been on PC. So it's just like a PC laptop running like little DJ softwares. I mean, now I use an Alienware 15-inch laptop, Ableton 9.7, so 10. I'm going to be on 10 very soon. But Ableton, Alienware, the Ableton Push now works good for me. I like that a lot. But back then it was like I was using this DJ software by Avid and my little HP laptop.
Did you have any hardware? Or?
Yeah, I went through different MIDI controllers. I had this actual dedicated DJ controller for a while and all the knobs stopped working. I was just beat that thing to hell. And then I would use, I would just map MIDI keyboards to be DJ controllers for a while. I did that for a while.
Tell me about that. Describe that for somebody who might not know.
I would take like an M Audio MIDI keyboard that's really meant for playing like notes into a audio software. And I would just map the different keys. Like the far left key would be the play button for the left track. The far right key would be the play button for the other deck. I would just change it from being a keyboard to being a DJ controller.
To being a controller. Wow.
Use the 8 knobs for the different things you would need for DJing, filters and volumes and stuff. So I would always kind of make it work. I was really...
So you're programming it from a young age.
Yeah, but it was in the software I had. It was easy as right clicking and hitting the thing. Yeah, and it would map it. So I was lucky to have one that made it easy on me. I wasn't doing that deep of stuff to make that happen, but that's how I got out there and was able to play little sets here and there.
But I think it's so important to, as an artist, to start with what you got and figure out how to make it more in a way. Like
you have to get out there. Some people wait to have all the perfect equipment and the perfect opportunity. I think you do have to kind of just get out there and do your best sometimes without settling. There's a balance there where you want to make sure you can, like, I look back and I'm like, gosh, I'm lucky that set didn't train wreck or my laptop didn't die in the middle of the set or whatever. I think there's an aspect of respect for the crowd where you show up prepared enough too. But there's a balance of like, get out there, don't wait too long.
Well, I just feel like if you wanted to start making music today, if you've never made music in your life, you don't need to walk into $1 million studio to start.
Oh, especially not these days.
And it would be terrifying. It would be the absolute wrong move because there's too much going on. And you really don't know even, what the signal flow is or like how to work on an instrument. Yeah. And there's so much to be learned. So you just got to start small with whatever you have.
I agree. I think understand what you have in front of you before you add more is important.
Yes.
Like you want to make music on a computer, understand computers enough. to be good at making computer music. You don't have to become a genius and know how to build your own or whatever, which probably would be good for most computer musicians to know how to do. But know them enough. I mean, your job's going to depend on it if you want this to be a career, or just if you want to be professional at it or do a good job, you're going to want to first understand your computer. Like I know I've seen some guys go out and buy all the top of the line, a Kai controller or APC this and all these different mixers. And some people, maybe that's good. Maybe it motivates them to do more music making. But in my opinion, I'd say learn what's in front of you. Like get really good on the DAW or whatever audio software you're using with just the mouse, whatever you have. So you, like for me, buying gear is just to solve a workflow problem. Like I'm spending too much time drawing notes with my mouse. Get a MIDI keyboard. Maybe take a few lessons on playing keyboard. Because like you can have a keyboard, but if you don't know how to play a keyboard, it's almost worse than just drawing in notes.
Because then you have to correct all the wrong notes.
Yeah, so what? It's like a wash almost. Like if you, depending on how you handle that, I think. But it's really there's no one way to do it. That's kind of how I always did it. I had a mouse and a keyboard and a computer for like 6 years. That's all I had. I think for kids these days, or just people getting into it, whether they're young or old, I think the most important thing is quality speakers or headphones first and foremost. Like probably headphones before anything else, because you can even get good speakers, but put them in a bad room and fool yourself. You know, getting really good headphones and listening to lots of music on that pair of headphones and then going and making music on them.
Tell me about what good headphones are in your mind.
Right. Good. It's such a subjective word.
Well, yeah. And, if you had $1 million is different than if you had, when you're 15 starting out. But
yeah, I would.
What do you like at the moment?
I use Audio-Technica, the GTX, I think 50. They're good. I think for me, it's important to not get, I would say, make sure the headphones don't have an inherent boost in any range. Some headphones have an inherent bass boost, for instance.
Beats.
Okay, you can say it. Yeah, I think they do. I've at least heard that.
I had some Beats in the past and I sold them for something else.
But to be fair, there's electronic producers that produce on Beats and they're very successful.
I believe it.
But the trick is tuning your ear. So
yeah.
What's a song that you kind of want to have the same sonic quality as, or the same relative bass level as, or something? Listen to that on that pair, but get used to what that sounds like, and then you go make music on it. For me, I went with, I have heard they're flat. I went and listened to music on a lot. In fact, my girlfriend had them for a long time, so I would listen to music on them for a while, and I like the response. For me, I like headphones that kind of hug my ear and keep, how if you push them against your ear, you get that good bass sound. I wanted headphones that just did that, just resting there. And that's what those were. I feel like I got that. Because with headphones, you can make the room right there on your head. In the room with monitors, you have to actually get them to marry each other, which, to be fair, I think everyone should have that eventually if they're going to be doing electronic music. Get a good room, get good monitors. But yeah, start with just headphones, computer, just have fun. Like, it's really about have fun, get into yourself with the music is how I would. That's what it is for me. Like, use the music to discover more about myself. Like, you can uncover really bad parts of your character by making music, which is really interesting and helpful, I think. Good parts of your character, things you like, things you didn't know you like. It's weird.
So you've gone introspective with your music when you're making it.
I've tried to, and I've not always been steadfast in that, but that's been something that is important to me, is to use it as a tool for self-discovery. Because you can see, it's just a reflection of where your mind's at any given time. You're just opening a computer and just telling it to make noises, So why did you decide to keep those noises and not those? Why did you keep those notes and not others? In a weird way, it can kind of show you different trends if you're honest throughout the process. Like sometimes you'll do something and you'll tell yourself, or I'll tell myself, oh, I just did that because I heard such and such artist do that. And that uncovers a part of myself that I need to be aware of, that like we do socially copy each other. And it's not always a bad thing, but being aware of it's good. It can help me stay more genuine. Like, okay, he did that. Maybe I'll do something else, And other times I'll ask myself, why did I do that? And it'll be a more genuine answer. Like, it made me feel this emotion that I care about. That's now I might go down that trail longer. Maybe that's more meaningful. So in some ways it uncovers parts of yourself not even just the making of music, just being in the industry and seeing how you react to different influences too. It's an interesting pursuit. And I think we all are affected emotionally by certain music, you know, depending on what that emotion is. It just, like we were saying earlier, it cuts past your ego and it just makes you feel something. So if you reflect on that constantly, I think for me, it's really fun because I've gotten to learn a lot about myself and people in general, psychology almost, just from making music and talking to people about it and stuff.
So you bring up two interesting points. I mean, you bring up many interesting points, but two that I want to dive into is the notion that you are doing it for yourself, and in a way it is revealing, and it's something that maybe wasn't on the surface evident.
Yes.
But then at the same time, noticing that it's coming from somebody else, or like an inspiration, and or I like the way that sounds because it sounds like this other artist that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of getting to the other people's perception of the music. So it's your perception of it, but also you're playing it for a response. And so what response from a crowd or audience are you really aiming for? Or is that secondary to the internal response?
I want it to be secondary. I think a lot of times I want it to be secondary, but I also care about it. So like, I don't want to be so obsessed with just what it is for me that I get up and play music that just either doesn't fit the context of the show, or it's an interesting balance. Because I think first and foremost, I do it for myself. If I didn't enjoy it so much, I wouldn't have done it for 10 years for no money. Or, like I just did it for 10 years just cause. So I think, and that's why I'm able to have fun with it too. If I got rid of all that, it'd be less fun. It's fun to use it for me in a self-discovery type way too. So that's where I get a lot of the enjoyment out of it, is to use it more as that, in that context. And I mean, to be fair, a lot of times I just make a song. Like I'll just, it's not like I'm always that deep in thought when I'm doing it. I'm not gonna pretend I'm some philosopher in Ableton. I'm just at the base, like it has been that for me. So with the whole, how to deal with a crowd response in relation to all that. Yeah, first and foremost, I think the key is it's most meaningful when the reaction comes from something that's also genuine on my part. If I tweak it for the reaction and I get that reaction, okay, it's like I engineered it versus just it being a genuine, I did my thing, they did their thing. I want everyone to be honest. So if I divorce of my own honesty for a reaction, it kind of defeats the purpose for me. Like, it wouldn't mean, it's like if an artist just started copying another artist to be able to sell paintings, but they don't like to paint anymore because that's not what they would have painted. So it's really key, like, to make sure, because I don't think I'd be able to provide much enjoyment to other people if I'm not genuinely up there having fun. Like at a show, for instance. Like, I want to be having a lot of fun.
Well, it showed at that last one that I saw you at. You looked like you're having a blast, and it
I did
translated to the audience.
I had a lot of fun with that, and that was music I would have listened to on my own otherwise. I think that's the key. Like, I would have listened to that at home on SoundCloud in headphones. So I'm glad everyone else liked it too, and that's where I have the most fun. I've appreciated that from other artists where I see them like really having fun. Like, I've seen artists play sets that they've had to play.
Yeah.
And I've seen artists play sets that they get to play. And it's so much fun to be a participant in the ones they get to play. And you see them just like soaking up all that good vibe of getting out what they need to get out musically, and then watching people just soak it up. It's like, for me, the most meaningful type experience I have, either as a person going to a show or playing it. Like, that's where, and like, you can just see it. You can see if someone's doing it like a day job, or if they're just legit having fun up there playing music they love. So just keeping it more simple, really. Because it's a huge business now, music. And everyone's got to get paid, and there's got to be like there's an aspect of money there for sure. But I think really people have the most fun when they're just, you can't fake fun. I think that's what it comes down to. You can't fake enjoyment. It's really obvious, and we can all pick up on it. A lot of people have a lot of intuition with that. And it's a lot of work to be able to get up to that position too. And I want it to be fun at the end. I don't want a second day job, so, but I appreciate it. Yeah. I genuinely had a lot of fun.
Good.
I'm glad
it really did show.
It.
So, let's talk about you as a music fan for a minute, going back. So kind of separating yourself as a musician from a consumer. Were there any shows that stuck out to you as a young individual who helped, maybe drive home the fact that looks like it could be really fun to do as a occupation?
Yeah. Well, I got into electronic music before I could drive, before I was old enough for a lot of the shows. A lot of them are 18 and up. I was watching a lot of like old Tiesto shows on YouTube. Like when he was just playing shows, because he was one of the first artists to sell out an arena, was Tiesto. He was the first time where a DJ played an arena, because it used to be like a DJ might open up for a band and the band would play the arena, but he was like the first guy to just play a DJ set to an arena full of people. And he did in like Amsterdam or something. I can't remember, in Europe somewhere. But I didn't know, because when I was making electronic music back then, I would mostly get made fun of. I mean, it was like, oh, okay.
And let's just set the context for everybody. First of all, you're 24, correct?
Currently, yes.
Okay, yeah. Currently 24. Whenever you're listening out there, who knows? Add some time to it. But
born in 1994.
But yeah, when you're talking about Tiesto and discovering music on YouTube, it's a modern way of
yes.
Thinking about music in a visual form and seeing that he sold out the venue.
Yeah, I didn't understand. I think that's for me. I always thought that, like, I knew I loved electronic music, and at the time, trance was like the genre that was closest to what I was into. I just loved all the melody. I loved my favorite part was when there was no drums and they would go into these crazy ambient bridges with all these pads and voices, and then it would break into some huge melody drop, whatever. But I liked how melody focused it was and emotional. Cheesy for sure sometimes, but a lot of emotional stuff behind it. It was going past just, here's a bunch of sounds I can make, into like, you could see the artists a lot of times were trying to communicate something more emotional or something a little deeper. So with Tiesto, I just didn't know, when I started seeing these videos, I didn't realize like, oh, people actually go see this music. Because I knew there was bands, I knew people were playing shows, and I just didn't know there was any kind of opportunity for this music to be at a large scale. I didn't know. I mean, it was still really small. Things like big electronic outbursts hadn't happened in the US yet. You didn't have dubstep yet. You didn't have all that. Happened when I was in high school, which was crazy to see. It happened quick. It
happened very fast. And then suddenly, Fortune 500 companies with advertisements and dubstep in the background.
Yeah.
You're like,
that
wow,
happened.
You're like, you're selling insurance or a car with dubstep? Like, I don't get it.
It happened quick, because just a few years before that, I mean, it was very obscure. People thought it sounded
weird. Cool. And then you got to get the millennials on board. And
it was just a weird transition.
It happened fast. It was a wave.
So, but to answer your initial question, I didn't go to like a huge electronic music festival or show or anything, because I was so young I couldn't go. But I saw videos of these events and I realized they were a thing. They, of course, at that time, they were all in Europe. Like all these videos were in like the Netherlands and stuff. These guys were way ahead on that as far as having big shows for electronic music artists. That happened over there. It's silly because we kind of had it in the US for a while. In the 80s, we had our house music in Chicago and Detroit and stuff. And then it like became more commercialized in Europe and then became commercialized here. So it's kind of like, that's how I saw the history of electronic music as I look back. But so it was those videos for whatever reason. And I would just, after that, go look at all the different trance guys and even other genres like minimal techno guys. And I just was like, okay, so there's people do this. This is what they do. They make electronic music. And I realized it is an obscure option, but it was an option I really wanted to give like a real shot. So at that age, I didn't know quite what that meant. I had a lot of self-discovery to go through, but it started with that. My first ever actual electronic music show, I was 18 years old, and I went to Las Vegas, and I went to EDC. I had never been to any show before. I had never been to any kind of small club.
So you dove into the deep end.
I just went and spent $2,000 or whatever, and went, I know I want to see all this stuff. And it was, again, I was like 18. I was in Central Oregon. There wasn't like a whole lot of other options. Like I could have gone to Portland to see some other shows at some like whiskey
Smaller
bar or
venue.
something,
Yeah.
and it would have been cool. But it ended up being the first one I went to back in 2012 or whatever. I went. I mean, that was my first one.
Did that change your trajectory, or did it reinforce anything?
It was crazy. I mean, it made me want to make electronic music more. For a time, it made me it was both good and bad. It was motivating, but it caused me to kind of try to copy people for a while, seeing it so grandiose and so big. It did for a while, if I'm honest, it distracted me from more of the genuine aspect of my pursuit. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, oh my gosh, it was crazy. After that, I got more into the niche type electronic music I'm into now. More, because no disrespect on those real big events, but I mean, there's a lot of money behind it.
Oh yeah.
Some of the smaller events have music I think I like a little more nowadays, but it's just my taste. I like nowadays, I like a lot more of the beats that have kind of like a hip hop type drum to them, but a lot of the same stuff that I liked about trance. I want like cool, clean chords, clean notes, really clean mix, really nice bass. I don't like being slapped in the face with a loud siren type sound or like a really loud, I want it to be clean, have some vibe to it.
Soft on the ear.
Yeah, softer. I don't want things to like hurt my ear. I mean, you can go to some shows that it can hurt if you're not careful. Certain sounds. So just I like clarity, and again, I think it has to do with that Enya. Like all that is just smooth. The whole song.
Yeah.
There's no drop. I mean, it's just smooth. That's why. But I think that's part of what I keep wanting to hear is like that smoothness. When there's like that one harsh noise just over the top, kind of bothers me.
So you want to go out there and kind of figure out how to EQ it or
get
change
rid
the
of
sound.
it. Yeah,
get
just
rid
notch
of it.
that sound out. Everything else sounds good. So just that getting a clean sound with something beneath just rhythm and notes, just one other thing to it. That's what I respond to subconsciously. I think I got on a tangent from your initial question, but I think that was my progress of getting more and more into electronic music was like I saw those videos and I was always making music. And I went to all those shows and I got to go to multiple genres. That was the cool thing about EDC is it's very multi-genre. And I got to see like, okay, this is a huge scene now. I mean, in 2012, I realized this is huge, maybe bigger than all these other genres that I thought were way bigger. I mean, now today in 2018, electronic music might be one of the bigger scenes as far as shows going on, and it's way up there now. So yeah, it was those videos, then EDC, and then I started getting into more of those smaller, kind of like underground shows with like, because like, dubstep happened and there's a lot of people playing dubstep, like, Burial.
No,
it's like this type of dubstep, old school dubstep that was really, it was like a deep vibe. There was always like a soundscape kind of going on. It was at that 70 BPM dubstep rhythmic feel, but it was really almost like an ambient overtone going on. Cool mixture of like the two vibes. It almost sounded like it had to be played in like a huge warehouse or something, like a dark warehouse. Kind of had this certain feel to it. And I kind of like started gravitating towards those type of events where people were playing more niche bass music. But that was kind of my progression. I tried the biggest one I could think of first. That's why I went to EDC.
Well, you went for it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so what equipment are you using now? You mentioned Alienware computer.
That's for my, so
home
I have a
studio.
Okay, so when I play shows, it's the Ableton Push, it's Ableton, it's the Alienware. That's it. I DJ that way. At home, I have a PC that I made. I'm a total nerd, so I built my own PC, Ableton on there, lots of VST plugins and stuff like that. We have some hardware. My girlfriend and I make music together. We have our page, Adam and Eve, ADM X Eve. So and she plays guitar, bass, piano. So we do have some hardware. We have like a Marshall stack. We have some stuff like that. Sometimes we'll run audio through but a lot of I'll be honest, a lot of my production is in the computer, a lot of software plugins. We do have the Roland Phantom or Amber. It's hers really, but we both use the Roland Phantom. It's like a digital sampler synthesizer. But yeah, most of it is VST plugins, Ableton. I do a lot in MIDI, or at least start in MIDI. Like I said, growing up, I was a lot of just computer, mouse, keyboard. So I really don't a lot of times feel like I need to get outside the box and start wiring up synths, though I honestly would have a lot of fun doing that.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't plan to keep myself all software, and I have done some fun things outside the box with hardware.
But let's dive into the software for a second, because that's where you started, and clearly you know how to make things work. What plugins do you seem to leverage the most?
I use Omnisphere, a lot of Omnisphere. It's got that lush atmospheric bass that I really want for my music. But I'll do a lot of, even just Operator is one of the free ones that comes with Ableton. People underestimate that plugin all the time. A lot of times people underestimate the ones that come with their DAW. So I'll use Operator, and I think I have a lot of fun using the microphone. I'll sing some note. Like I suck at singing, but I'll just put some audio into my microphone, auto-tune that, make that into a synth. So I like to not stay in any one plugin too much. I have been doing
what are you using to auto-tune your voice?
Even manual. I'll do manual tuning in Ableton a lot of times. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's a few ways I'll do
so automation mapping, and like you draw.
Maybe. Depends.
You could draw in the notes or something.
It depends. It kind of depends, case by case. Sometimes I might use like an isotope, like Nectar is one of the vocal processing I've used, but it depends. Sometimes I'll just find, like sometimes I'll just try to hum for a while and just find the section where I was the most consistent and just keep that.
Okay.
Tune that. It gives it more character. If you use too much of an algorithm to auto-tune it, now it sounds almost just like a synth. So it kind of it depends though how I want it to come out. I'll use a few techniques for that. But yeah, Omnisphere, Serum, a few different ones, but it really depends. They all do a lot of the same things as each other, and then some of them have some unique things that only they do. But I like to mix it up, and like I've got a lot of the main ones people will use, Massive and stuff, but I don't think it's about really the tool as much as just hearing the good, like sorting through the madness is the key with all these different tools. Hearing what it did that was good and keeping it, and hearing what it did that was bad and just relentlessly deleting or changing that, not looking back. Just taking every little good thing that comes out and just really focusing on it. It's a lot of sifting for me. Create lots and lots of sound and sift down to the good stuff. That's how I get a lot of my crazy, weird sounds.
And how do you figure out what the right combination of layers to sift down into like the essence of your song?
It's really subconscious for me. It's how I mean, there's some best practices, like keeping certain sounds in certain frequency ranges. And I'm definitely mindful of those kind of engineering techniques.
Mention any if you feel like it.
Well, just giving something the lows, giving something the mids, giving something the highs, and keeping them in there. And like that's definitely part of it. But it's an overall feeling I get. It's a subconscious thing. And a lot of times I have to stop and come back to a song to make sure that that keeps happening, that feeling keeps happening. Sometimes it happens just the first time. You get really excited about it and you listen to it the next day and you got to be honest and be like, they don't work together. Maybe I thought that worked right. A lot of honesty, a lot of just but also not caring too much. Not too much attachment is important with electronic music. There's always more sound that can be made. Just delete it. If you're not really excited about it, that's something I got from like my girlfriend. She's really, when she produces, she's really about like, if it's not 100%, I'm super excited, just delete it. Like you don't want people to be like, meh, about all your layers. If you're willing to go meh and keep it, you're going to be putting that out. A bunch of meh.
Yeah.
So just going, okay, I'm not that excited. I got to delete it.
Nice.
Keep trying harder.
Something I read recently is it's either fuck yeah or no.
Yeah, that's how really she says it. I mean, it's like it's either fuck yes or fuck no. I mean, what do you want to give everyone? Or what do you want to hear when you play your own music? A bunch of like, yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, come on. You're here. You have the opportunity to change it before you save it and export it. Make sure it's like something you're really excited about or something you really get a response out of. So. And
what do you do like with songs that you come back to the next day and it just doesn't sound as awesome as you thought it did the day before? Do you go back and rework it, or do you kind of start fresh slate?
Sometimes I'll do either one.
And when do you know when to abandon and when to rework? Or how do you draw that line? That also is
subconscious almost, where I'm feeling like sometimes it's nice to go back to those and just mute the part that's throwing you off. Mute it. Does the rest sound good? And if that's the case and you mute that part that's throwing you off and the rest sounds okay, delete the part that's throwing you off, stop. Sometimes it's good to go try to change it and get it to sound right. I've had that happen where the layer just was throwing me off, but I was able to make it not throw me off and work good and complement the rest of the layers. That's tough as an artist. That's really tough. Like that's what you have to kind of over time develop, is the mentality of, well, that needs to just go. Like there's sometimes an analytical component of like, I have tried to rework that for 3 days now. Let's just get rid of it, you know? Or you mute it and you really hear potential without it. That's another reason to get rid of it. It's just hard to say. That's the thing. It's really hard to articulate a lot of these scenarios. Art. Yeah, you're just knowing when to call it quits on certain things. That gets developed over time. And it also comes with like putting out music and then listening to it after and still being kind of a perfectionist. Like I'll listen to stuff from when I was younger with my other brands that I had, be like, I can't believe that sounded okay. And I just put that out. Like it just doesn't sound okay. Just being honest with yourself so you can grow and get even better and better. Yeah, again, the attachment. Sometimes like on my older music, I'd realize, well, I kept it because I liked it and I felt proud about it, but don't be so attached to it. It's just a noise you made.
Yeah, but at the time, it might have been the best thing you had ever created. And
yeah,
as a kid, you know, when you're making that first song, it's precious. You know,
and that's I think that
it's a masterpiece of a first song. You know, like,
yes, and that's the introspective aspect of music is going. Well, sometimes you think you're making good things that aren't good. That's deep. Like sometimes I had a emotional reaction to a thing I made, and later I went, it's out of key. Like it's not even in key or something. So tuning your mind to it's just crazy. It goes both into yourself and and then back out into the world. It's cool to watch that evolve, and you just can't hold on to much. You got to just keep moving forward and making honest music and try to have fun, I think, at the end of the day. But it is an art to choose what to keep and what to get rid of. And there's not always a why. Like, because your brain's going to, well, why? Because you're doing like a, you know, if you're going to go hit delete on your keyboard, the analytical part of your brain is going to start asking questions. And it's part of the art is just turning it off and not caring if it leads to things. Like in life, you really want to ask questions. Why are you turning right? That's important. With music, it's not as important to have that analytical component. In the creative part of the process, it's really important to know, maybe I don't care. Maybe there's no good analytical reason. Maybe I don't care. It's like swimming until you find the warm water, I guess. You're like, okay, no, this just feels right. I can't even break it down intellectually why this sounds right or feels right. It just does, and now I'm here, and now I'm going to try to develop this part of the song more. So it's tough because especially if like I'm a pretty analytical person, but it almost doesn't serve me a whole lot in music sometimes. It's really helpful when you're done with the creative part and now you're like mixing and mastering and you want to tune it all real good. Analytical brain's amazing at that. You can start to get into the science of sound and you can start to get it to sound right for various analytical reasons. But you can't use analytical reasons to get to an emotional reaction. For me, I can't think my way into that. I have to find myself there and just develop it. I have to spend lots of time in my software and working on music to finally kind of more or less sometimes stumble upon it and then just develop it when I find myself there.
So when you say like stumble upon it, does that mean that you start out the day wanting to make a song and you're not sure what there is to be, or do you start out with a pretty clear idea of the direction?
It's never clear, but sometimes the slate is blank. Sometimes the slate is blank, and I just start hitting buttons and pulling up patches, start with some sound.
See what happens.
Till something feels cool. It's really like a lot of subconscious reactions I'm kind of tuning myself to hear and to respond to. My brain will just say like, no, that's cool. That makes... Like you listen to, like when you read a blog post on a song, it's interesting. They have to come up with really clever adjectives. The warm, they call things warm. They call things inspiring. They call things this and that, but those words never quite get it. So it's more like this, there's this feeling you can tune into. So you just start throwing sounds at your brain, or I do, throw a bunch of sounds at my brain. Something sticks in a weird subconscious way that's a lot of times hard to articulate. And then I try to take it as far as I can without moving it away from that initial feeling it gave me, just stretching out that feeling, seeing what more I can add or change without that feeling going away. So, and that takes a lot of being in tune with yourself and finding ways to get back to that mental state when you go to work on the track again. And sometimes you can't get back there, and now you're working on the same track with a different mental state, and it'll evolve because of that. But yeah, it's a lot of weird cues like that. So I'll sometimes though I'll go to let's say I've gone to a festival. A lot of times after a festival, when I come home, like if I was just attending, I'll have a lot of content flying around in my brain that will definitely influence the production of my track.
Meaning things and artists that you've heard at the show.
Yeah, and I usually try to not focus on any one show. I just try to take all that content and render it down into like one influence while I'm going out and making a new track. To try to, as a defense against copying, which is really easy to do subconsciously. And I try not to hold that against artists too much either, because it's really hard to like not do, especially if something's really impressive to you and you responded to it. Why wouldn't you? But to be genuine, I think it's important to at least notice if you're doing that. And so if I come back from a festival or some huge concert, there's going to be influence. There's definitely influence in there. And especially if I had a really good time, it's going to be a strong influence. And there's going to be things about their music that I was really into that will definitely find its way into the production process in some way. I think for me, it's just trying to boil it down to be more subconscious than anything. Like I don't want to go in and go, oh, his kicks are always super like punchy like this, and I want to do that exact kick drum, or like I try not to get too specific. So if I'm not analyzing specifics in my head, it can kind of sink into the subconscious and just work its way organically into my the sound I've already developed for myself, and it becomes more of an interpretation of the event than just me making a song like a guy I just saw. But it's in there. I try to, because to answer your question of like, do I go in with an idea or not? I just go in and try to make music on a regular basis, no matter what.
So do you have a schedule, or do you have a target that you aim for?
I mean, I end up, what do you do? Almost every day I end up working on music no matter what, just because that's really what I just like to do. I mean, I do other things for fun. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love going out in the mountains a lot and playing video games just like anyone else. But just like naturally, it's usually daily for me to work on something. I think it's important almost every day for most artists just to just get in that space. Try to get used to deciding to just try to be creative. I don't think you can force creativity. Like if you sit down and you get in there and you're trying and you're putting yourself in front of your tools and you're doing your best to stimulate your mind into that and nothing's going, then that is what it is.
But you make yourself get to there and behind the tools
Yeah.
in progress to give yourself a chance
It's
for
like,
things to flow easily. And then if they don't, cut it off.
yeah, I have a weird analogy coming up in my head right now.
Let's go with it.
What is it? It was like those guys who would scan the universe for alien transmissions. SETI?
SETI. Yep.
SETI.
Yep.
Okay. It's okay. Imagine creative flow state as like a random thing in the air, like a radio signal.
Okay.
And you have to just put the antenna up and turn it on
Gotta look.
and scan through the frequencies, or you're never going to catch it. With electronic music or any music, if you're going to like take something from this wild part of our consciousness we can't understand, creativity, we don't understand it. Brain scientists don't have the faintest clue why we're creative or why we paint. They don't know. It just doesn't do anything to help us survive as a species. So if you're going to engage with that, you have to at least give your brain a chance to try to soak some of that up. And for me, it's like getting into my software, my tools. Sometimes there's meditation involved. Like I'm big into like mindfulness meditation, trying to breathe and remove all the survival type thoughts going through my head, bills, job, whatever. None of that's going to help you be creative. Meditating back to just being there, being present. Have your antenna on, really, and you might never get a signal from another alien race, or you might. Like for me, if I just turn on that antenna enough, I end up getting something quite often. You get it more than you'd expect if you just get into that space.
And when do you turn on the antenna? Is it a consistent time of day?
No, I mean, for me, it's usually the evening, honestly, just because of like the schedule of my job. Like it's a pretty normal, like 9 to 5 work day, through the week. So it's evenings. Also, when I was a kid, even like just in the summer, it was the evenings because everyone would be in bed and like not as many people calling or talking to you. So like late at night, sometimes I've noticed a lot of electronic musicians become major night owls because 2 or 3 a.m. You're not dealing with a lot of that like FOMO, like, oh, what is everyone doing right now? It's 3 a.m. They're sleeping. Okay. I mean, if it's Friday night, maybe they're drinking, but they're sleeping. So there's no one that you're worried about. There's nothing you're worried about missing out on subconsciously. There's no work to be done. There's just you in the dark with a computer. And that's where like good music comes from for me. So late night sometimes is an interestingly stimulating time because your brain is like got almost no influence except for like, well, we want to be creative. We're just here and there's nothing going on. Everyone's asleep. So like late at night, but for me, like the evenings, just after work is when I have the time to do it. So that's where I figure if, any time to turn on that antenna, I might as well do it now while I have time. But on the weekends, I might open a track up in the morning, like coffee. Like when I'm drinking coffee in the morning and stuff, my mind's usually a little less creative, I've noticed. Just because I'm waking up still. And
because of the coffee or because of the morning or?
A little of both. I mean, I just drink coffee in the morning just to get up, but it makes me more analytical than anything. Coffee's kind of like a working drug.
Yeah.
So, but that's good too. Like in the mornings and the days, I'll do a lot more of that analytical type work, mixing, mastering, fine tuning, get real analytical about my music, cut out things that I can cut out. Doing just a lot of engineering best practices and getting it up to sonic quality that I'm proud of. And that's a trend for me, not a strict thing. I've had a lot of creative output during the day when the sun's out and stuff, but I've just can shut out a lot of stuff at night and get down to that subconscious space where all the magic happens.
Do you feel like it's easier to get into that space when you haven't slept for, the whole day, or like you're slightly sleep deprived as opposed to waking up fresh after fresh on sleep?
I don't know if, I think I've noticed I've taken sleep pretty seriously for my health. That's been an improvement. But being a little tired can help. I think I see what you're getting at, where like you're not trying to solve as many problems when you're as tired. You're feeling more. So I think there's a little bit of that going on, but more or less, it's just for me the subconscious knowledge of like nothing's happening right now. It's late at night. It's like free space. There's just nothing happening. There's nothing you need to do. You're not missing any commitments right now.
Nobody's going to call you.
Yeah. Like that you're just able to sit here in silence and do your thing if you want. And there's something just subconsciously freeing about it. my mind lets go of all sorts of stuff when it's later like that. So
Tell me about your sleep and meditation.
okay, well, so I brought up sleep just because I don't know. I recently have noticed a lot of people think they can do without sleep. The workaholics, they're like, oh, I'll just sleep less.
Sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah, you'll die if you don't sleep. Like, and we know
A fact.
that. Yeah. So for me, mental clarity is really important, and sleep helps me with mental clarity a lot. So that's all I really on sleep. That's as far as my opinion goes. Is like, really though, people should study sleep. They should look at the studies on how it reflects into mental states, how it reflects into overall physical health. It's important to sleep, I think. And in electronic music, there's a lack of sleep going on in the scene. And that's not healthy. I'm not saying we need to change all the shows to start at 3 p.m. or anything. Like, I like to have a late night and have fun too, like anyone else. But I just bring that up because a lot of people, and artists too, that, care a lot about their work and having a career in music, they make sleep something that's not important. And I think that's really bad. I think there's a reason there's a lot of depression in the scene. A lot of musicians get really depressed. There's a lack of mental health. There's a lack of health, I think. And I think sleep is a big part of that. For me, making sure I sleep correct has been actually a big deal. More important though, you brought up meditation. I mean, single-handedly, one of the more important things I engage with in my life is meditating, because it's just listening to your breath and focusing on what your mind's trying to throw at you for me, all meditating is focusing on your breath and being in the present moment. It doesn't have to be in any position. You don't have to sit a certain way.
Do you have a mantra or anything audible?
I don't.
Okay.
I just listen to my breath. I think, and I did get into it honestly from like when I was young. I had learned some things about Buddhism, and they invented it more or less. I mean, I think the Hindus did, but the Buddhists brought it to a really practical place. But myself, it's very simple. I just focus on my breath. Maybe I'm sitting cross-legged. Maybe I'm sitting in a chair. Maybe I'm laying in bed. For me, it's just a matter of not being a victim of my thoughts, but being an observer of them, watching them occur, and trying to dissociate myself from the reactions. Because we're reactive creatures. Things happen, we react. That's how we've survived. We've learned how to react to things in certain ways. We also react to our thoughts. We like to think we create our thoughts. More so, we get them like a package in the mail, and we decide what to feel or think or do. Sometimes we decide what to feel. Sometimes the feeling kind of comes with it. But all meditating is for me is dissociating from that cycle and trying to watch it occur more than flinging it around with that cycle of thought, reaction. Choosing my reaction to be watching. That can be the reaction. Watch.
Your reaction can be non-action.
Yeah, more or less. I think that's what it comes down to. So meditating is good for me mental health wise. I use a certain tool for that. That's actually, they have a few out in the Colorado area, sensory deprivation.
Chambers.
Yeah, those are they're not cheap to do.
No, they're not.
But man, the most beneficial experience I have is going in there, dedicating 90 minutes to doing maintenance on my thoughts.
And for everybody listening who might not be familiar with the sensory deprivation chamber, basically it's water with a bunch of salt.
Yeah,
in it,
salt. Mm-hmm.
Epsom salt, so that you are buoyant no matter your body fat level. You're buoyant and you don't have to do anything. And it's basically kind of think of like a sun tanning bed, if you know what those things are. I've never been in one, but like a coffin, and they close you in and it's totally dark.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people get a little afraid of that. Like the ones I've gone to are more like a huge hot tub with no lid. Like you just go in and lay down and then the lights turn off.
Oh,
but you're not like shut into this.
Okay.
Some are like the pods.
Yeah, those are the ones I was thinking of.
Yeah, those are big.
I've done that.
But they're also bigger than they sound. Like even when the lid's closed, usually have at least a few feet. People think it'd be claustrophobic. But all the idea is so you don't hear, see, or feel anything.
You deprive your senses.
You're depriving your brain of any input of the external world. And oh boy, that turns into quite the reaction in the brain. I mean, like for me, a lot of times the first 20 minutes in the tank is all the different things that I didn't deal with. We are so good at pushing things back into the back of our mind. We get stressed. We don't think about things. We don't finish thoughts all the time. We don't finish thinking about things all the time. We leave things partially dealt with in our mind. And a lot of times I get in there and about 20 minutes of laying in this darkness, I'm like doing speed work of going through all that stuff because you got nothing else. When you really lay in that tank and you don't feel the edge anymore and you start to not feel your body as much, you realize like I'm just this mind right now and you've got nothing to do but work on it and think about it and let it be what it is. And it's just the amount of maintenance I end up doing in about 20 minutes of, and it's not like I can even take credit for doing it. I'm just laying there and my brain is doing all this. It's so good. It gets rid of all this stuff you let build up. For me, I can only speak for myself. This is definitely a common thing people report, just a lot of things, trauma. It's good, really helpful for people with trauma too, because that's just thoughts that aren't dealt with and feelings that are pushed back. It all comes up for me. I get it dealt with. And then the last hour 15 is just incredibly, it's like swimming through my own consciousness, like really discovering myself for hours. And well, usually it's about a 90-minute session. So I like to do that on a semi-regular basis, like monthly, go in there. It's like clear, like if you're into computers, it's like clearing your browser cache for your own brain. I mean, things just, you come out and you get more on point with your goals and things get put in perspective. A lot of things bother us that if you really think about it, it'll stop bothering you. Like it just is BS. A lot of stuff we worry about. So to be an artist, I think you have to be genuine with what your mind's giving you. And part of that is taking care of your mind. So for me, I do that with meditation, sensory deprivation, like going in the woods. That's why I love Colorado so much. I've only been out here for a few months, but I mean, I grew up in Oregon. Just getting out if you're not into hiking, that's fine. But for me, it's like get out in the woods where it's really quiet. And like the sounds I want to hear start kind of starting to build up in my subconscious when I'm out there in silence, looking at things that are beautiful. So this brings me to my next kind of like thought on like creativity, because you can go clear the slate in the sensory depth tank. You can do it in your bedroom meditating and stuff. But you got to give your mind space to come up with new things. Like a lot of artists just are always in their software, always in their studio. And I get it. Like we're motivated. A lot of these guys and girls really motivated. They want to make more music. It's just, you don't want what inspires you to be a piece of software. You have to, I think, get things from the real world that you can then output through your software. If you sit there outputting too much, you empty this tank. I mean, there's nothing left inside that's inspiring you. Now you've output everything. Sometimes I think as artists, we finish getting out what was in our mind. And if we don't go refill it with new life experiences and things other than making electronic music, we can't keep making good electronic music. So it's a balance there too. Laziness can step in and tell you like, oh bro, you need to do more input today, when really you just are being lazy. Like that's why I think put up the antenna every day, but also go experience life. Life isn't all about being in Ableton. It isn't. That's a fun part of life. Really happy I live in 2018. I can have this and all this stuff. I think for me, meditating, but then doing a lot of non-music things too, that just kind of put more content in your mind. It's like doing maintenance on your subconscious is important.
So let me jump in real quick, because you talk about your subconscious, and just go back to the meditation or sensory deprivation chambers. When you're in there, are you steering your mind in that first chunk where you said you were finishing your thoughts, so to speak? Mm-hmm. Are you steering it, or are you kind of being an observer?
I would say I'm not really personally steering it as much. It's almost like as soon as I give my mind that much space, it's yelling at me, deal with this. Oh my gosh, can we finish thinking about this thing you did last week? Please. It's almost like my mind begs me to just think about these things, because it's like I've got nothing else to distract me. So my mind's like, you just get rid of this. Is how it feels. It's weird. It's like a different part of me talking to me like that.
Yeah. That's great.
Like, yeah. Let's get rid of it. You're right. That was stupid. I should just get over it. Whatever the process is that I go through, it more so like yearns, like comes at me like a separate person and goes, dude, just think about this for 5 minutes. We'll be done with it. Yeah.
That's great. So let's talk about collaborations. Are there any? I know you collaborate with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And you guys make music together.
Yeah.
ADM.
Yes.
Space X space Eve.
Yeah.
EVE.
Yeah. That's my main collaboration project.
Okay. Are there any other artists that you work with, or?
I do.
Okay.
I haven't released any collaborations with my Aphasia project yet. I do have some in the works. I don't want to give any secrets yet who I'm working with, but there's some cool stuff going on there. With Adam and Eve, that's been really cool. Really, it's wow. When you do, all the stuff I've talked about with like personal music and like, having to be an introspective path and all those things. When you take two people with a similar mindset for that, because Amber has a very similar, it's even a little deeper for her for various reasons, music. That even leads to way more introspection when now you try to do that with someone else and you decide, see, it's one thing to just like collaborate with an artist once, like, yo, your stuff's cool. Hey, send me some stems. Oh, cool. And it works out. That's cool. That's fun too. But when you make a project with another person, that's a whole nother level of self-discovery. And man, it gets into every little facet of your life when you have two people that, we have a whole life together outside of music, but also music is a really, really important part of it. So that's been really, really interesting and has helped me with personal growth, actually, more than most things in my life, is committing to a genuine music project with someone else and having our own different subconscious minds both come together. It's very interesting. That's just been wild in a good way. Very challenging too. It's not all easy, really forces you to be, again, really honest with yourself and each other and learn how to communicate really well. It's really hard. There's so many nuances of music that are hard to describe that you have to talk about for this to work. So I think that's been one of the more meaningful collaborations I've had. But I love working with other artists, either whether it's them coming to the studio and working on a track right there or emailing stems to each other. Really fun. With Adam and Eve, we just did a remix for another artist. That'll be coming out soon. I don't want to do any secrets there either. Right. It's coming out though.
That's good. Stay tuned.
I played it at my set. It sounded great at the Fox. So collaborating's fun.
So tell me about collaborating with Amber. What do you play? What does she play?
Oh,
how does it work physically?
Yeah, like logistically, how does it play?
Logistically.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing with Amber is she knows so much about music. I mean, she started when she was 5 playing piano. So her strength is as a legit musician, like all the music theory you could imagine. She knows all of that. She's a classically trained pianist, multiple instrument musician. She can play. She played with this band called Band on the Moon, toured the whole country multiple times in a rock band playing bass. So she's been around with like music, very multi-talented. And she went and got fully educated on electronic music in LA. That's where we met. She was still going to school at Icon, amazing electronic music school in LA. So the thing is, I'm a nerd with technology, and she's a nerd with music. So our strengths and weaknesses kind of cross over on both ends. Like I don't know no music theory, and she doesn't know like nerd stuff with the computer. Like I've spent more time diving into sound design, and she spent more time diving into like music theory and like composing. But we've both spent time on both things. Mm-hmm. So a lot of crossover in every way. She's like, it's not like I do all the mixing and mastering and she does all the notes. Not even close. I mean, it's a lot of crossover, but there are those strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. I mean, but she also has like a lot of knowledge with doing live stuff. Like we're building a live set for like when I play as Aphasia, I'm doing a DJ set. You know, I'm not going to pretend it's something else, but with our Adam and Eve project, we're doing a live set. It sounds like a DJ set when we play it out, but we're doing a lot more than just playing the songs out. There's elements that she's playing out on a keyboard, like actually playing them out. And I've got control over the track stems. It's a very interesting design. She was a majority of her that built that. She was really good at the live part of Ableton. Like growing up, I used Mad Tracker, like I said, and then I used Cubase, and then I used Ableton. But there's two sides to Ableton. I don't know if you know, but there's the arrangement view, you know, where you just go from left to right and build everything. And there's live view where you've got different tracks and clips and you can just play them out live and do cool stuff. She really knows that live view. She's really played around with it, experimented with it a lot. So she's been kind of the mastermind of our live set when it comes to the design of it. Obviously, we both, you know, it's not like she doesn't hear
You
me
both
out.
have input.
Yeah, but
both
she's
creating.
really got talent with that.
That's awesome.
Part of it. And then, like I said, music theory and being able to play live as an actual musician. I play drums and stuff. Like, it's not like I'm totally rhythmically dumb or whatever, but I wouldn't try to pretend I could go up on stage and play all these elements on a synthesizer. I mean, I would not be able to. She could, though. It's been cool because we can challenge each other to get better in the parts that are our weaknesses. And then, but also it's a nice complementary workflow. So that's been cool with just working with her a lot. That project's been very interesting pursuit for both of us too. Like I said, there's all sorts of challenges, both technically, musically, interpersonally, that we go through. That's at the end of the day, I think really good for both of us.
What is your biggest struggle currently?
For me, it's the balance between receiving feedback from either a crowd or from like internet responses to music. It's balancing that with what I know I like, right? Because
sometimes they don't add up. Or
they're
not identical.
I think because it's really important, like we were saying, to have a sound that you like, that's like genuine to you and that reflects a genuine expression of how you feel and so forth. But it's also important to, like if you're playing a show or something, to care about the room, care about what you're doing to the vibe of the room and take that into consideration and take how things sound on those big systems even back home to the studio and care about it. So just balancing the impact of recognition on my music with how I want it to sound already or how I wanted it to sound before it was recognized.
What do you mean recognition?
Because you get like as a human being, if someone says, that was cool, man, like that was cool. Like sometimes people respond like that to the songs that I have the least genuine part in. And you have to still go, well, I like balancing that and staying genuine, but also listening to the reaction has been challenging to decide where the line is drawn. Because you don't want to be so boneheaded, like, I know what sounds good. That was cool.
And not take anything
Like,
else.
I don't care what you think. That's not necessarily how I want to be either. But I really want to stay true to sound that I enjoy and not divorce from that for any reason. I think that's my biggest challenge is just to keep my ego out of it. Really. Like, I don't mean to say that from like, oh, I'm so egoless, because I have I have sometimes, problems with that.
We all have egos.
Yeah. So keeping it in its place and taking it out when I need it, like when I am mixing down a track or mastering and get real critical and analytical. But finding that real balance where my ego belongs, where it doesn't. Deciding how much to adapt my sound to a particular show or to a particular context, when the right amount is just what I'm trying to find, not divorced from my own personal opinion of my music, and also not having my ears shut to what other people have to say and things like that.
So how do you adapt a song or a set?
Well, sometimes it depends on your time slot. You don't want to start a show.
But I mean sonically or...
Oh. You mean like for if I was going to play a certain set, how would I adjust my song for that? Or
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like I interrupted you. You were right on the same page. But
that's okay.
You're saying like you don't want to start out maybe with the heaviest banger, if
Yeah, it's like almost
in the daytime or something.
Yeah, like it's a context thing. Like certain artists will play for a sunrise a very different set than for their midnight slot or something, and that makes sense. I think there's a point to doing that, to adjusting for your context. Playing at before a certain artist there might be a certain aspect of like, okay, what kind of set do I want to play if I'm opening for this person? But really finding that right balance is important for me, because I don't want to be completely just 100% adaptive where I become a different artist for these different slots. You want to be like a distinct artist for all these slots, but just knowing like, cause it's nice for me though, cause I already make some music that's really chill that you almost can't dance to, cause it's really slow and it's deeper and it's more about feeling than anything else. And there's some songs that are definitely meant for dancing, and they're at these more high, like faster tempos or danceable tempos, and they're at these rhythms for that. So I kind of, it's nice for me because I kind of already make music from both sides of that. Some that are way more geared for just making you move around and have fun. Some that are a lot more about deep introspection and stuff. So I can stay playing music that I've made, within those different contexts. But at the end of the day, I want to just still make sure like that's a set I would love to listen to, and not divorce too far from that. Just genuine, what would I play if I was given the opportunity to play an hour of music that I would want to play? Tuning it, but staying genuine. I think that's my challenge, is finding that and remembering to stay humble and it's not like I, like a huge blown up art. I'm really starting out in many ways, tons of ways, most ways, really. Even though I've been doing it for a long time, I'm not like, but recognizing it early, I think is going to be important, just to, just do my thing, just have fun, make music I like, not care too much about the rest of it.
So let's plug for the listeners where in some of the different brands that you have.
Oh, well, right now I just have the Aphasia brand, and then I have the Adam and Eve brand with Amber. Yeah, Aphasia. My logo is like it's a circle with like a ring around it. So you'll see different pages. There's a few like on SoundCloud.
A circle with a ring?
A circle with a ring around it. Yeah, it's supposed to look like halo going around like a sphere.
Okay.
But when it's flattened out, it looks like a circle with like a ring around it of sorts. Anyways, that's the logo. You'll be able to recognize that when you look it up. But yeah, even on the current page, there's wide range. Like there's a song at 80 BPM, really crazy, loud, like bass, all this stuff. I have a song at 55 BPM. super slow, like my most recent one, which I made about sensory deprivation, the song Float Tank. I mean, it's obviously called Float Tank. And that it's just a different vibe. It's a different context. Some music is just for you to listen to at home on your headphones. So, just having that range, it's nice because those are all genuine reflections. Like I like to really have fun, and fast-paced bass music like is fun. So I do make that stuff, and I like that. And I try to be honest with myself that's fun is more shallow than these other deeper feelings, but it's also cool. Like it's also important to have fun. So I think just keeping that in perspective with my music is helpful. And I can produce all sorts of different types of music for different contexts that are still genuine in a way or another. I guess my point is this, when I'm honest with myself, the slower, more melodic music is truer, like to me. Like I would listen to that. I can listen to that for a lot longer time frame too than the super fast paced, crazy, high energy stuff, which I still love. I have lots of fun with that, but I think I like having that range and not feeling like I need to put one of those types on one brand and make that a different name. I think screw it. Like I like all those different ranges. Just have that be my brand.
That's great. And I think it's important to have that versatility and not be so niched in that you can't evolve.
Yeah, basically.
So let's talk about some of your earlier influences in music in general. We were discussing earlier about the notion of kind of starting small with what you have, and whether that be a computer and a mouse. Mm-hmm. And the internet has certainly evolved fast since during our lifetime. And starting out with Kazaa and torrenting and LimeWire and Napster and there was no place to buy music online, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, I know.
And till there was.
Right.
So all these things are evolving. People can torrent or download for free lots of tools that are legal, some of which are illegal. But going back to some of the artists that you mentioned, Richie Haughton. Am I saying that right?
We were talking about different styles before. Yeah, he's one. He's not like one of my main influences.
Okay.
But we were talking about like when we were eating it about electronic music. It all used to be called techno.
Yeah.
And he makes what I'd consider like a proper definition of techno nowadays. Very drum heavy, very like the rhythm is kind of the key to it. It's almost like a modern adaptation of like a drum circle in electronic music, where it's like very drum heavy and there's some other sounds in there. But most of his stuff I think is he has a cool his live setup's kind of cool actually. I like how he mixes DJing with live stuff he kind of throws on there. But you're talking about like torrenting and stuff. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of controversial debates that happen around that. The only thing I like about it, well, not the only thing, but one of the things I think is really cool is it does let young kids experiment, find out what they like. So I like that. I like the aspect that we can get these tools and that the young kids can get these tools and try, even without doing it illegally. There's like just that it's software and not all hardware anymore. You can do free trials of all these softwares legally and try them now. Just on your parents' computer, a kid could download a free trial of Ableton and you can do everything. It just won't let you save or export.
Yeah.
And he could just make music and see if that's fun. Before, to see if it's fun would be you're 10 grand in, and now you know if it's fun or not.
And now it's already not fun because you just spent all your money. And
it just increases the amount of people that can get in there, and it makes the music so diverse. I think that's why music's getting so diverse so quick. I mean, it's always been diverse music, but the fact that technology's gotten in there, it just goes all over the place now. Music has gone crazy
with sampling, and I'm not sure, if you are sampling.
I don't sample like a full track or anything. Like if we were to make a bootleg remix or something where we just took a track and we would make that clear. Like it would be called that song, Adam and Eve bootleg or whatever. I mean, I'll we, like most producers, we use like a sample pack or something. I don't generally keep any
like a
of
drum fill or something.
Sure. Yeah. Like I'll pull drum samples in and stuff. And I have a lot of fun recording stuff though. Like I've created my own sample pack just in my room. You just turn on the microphone and slap the table. That's a clap. Like you can make a lot of drum sounds really easily too. So at the end of the day, I just don't want to, I'm really big on pushing the boundary of sound design, you know, to a point. So I don't want it to be clear like, oh, he got that from that sample pack that I bought. And you can just tell that I use that snare. I do like to try to always put something on what I bring in. Like usually and it's because of the way I do my process, like a drum sample usually it's going to be tuned. It's going to be EQ'd, and it's not going to sound like it does right out of the pack anyways, but yeah, I'll pull in some sound. I do really like to create as much as I can from the ground up. It's more fulfilling, I think. But to be honest, yeah, I mean, sometimes there's some kick drums that just sound amazing. You don't need to change them.
And when you're making a sample pack,
mm-hmm.
like tell me about that. So I imagine it's a folder of audio.
Yeah, it's just a folder of
WAV files.
Yeah, that's it.
And how long is it?
As long as the sound is occurring for. I mean, I'll just take like one of my sounds I like to make. You got like your coiled headphone cord, just like on a table. That's a crazy. And then take maybe one of those peaks sounds like a cool rim shot or something. I mean, sound's pretty infinite. So I like to just mess around like that.
So they're all kind of different lengths.
Yeah, and like shake a bottle of ibuprofen. To just grab stuff and get that noise. That way, no one else has that sample. No one shook that bottle of ibuprofen in front of that microphone. Yeah. So like whatever I'm pulling from there is going to be unique. Just increasing your library of unique sounds is cool. Like, so using a microphone is, I think, fun. For a producer that is apprehensive to use samples, just get a microphone. Like go make a snare out of like all sorts of things that you can smash together.
And then do you manually or, with your mouse add it to the song, or do you map it to MIDI and then play it?
I'm usually just going to use the mouse and get it in there real precise. But I like to use my push in drum rack mode. I'll put like 100 slices in a drum rack and have, 64? Just sounds to hit. I like to use the drum rack mode on the push to play things in too. But mixture of both. Depends on where I'm at in the song and what kind of sound it is, how I want to get it in there. But yeah, I do like to slice things into groups and play them. It's a pretty common way. In Ableton, people will get tons of different chops. Because like I might take a whole sample pack and just put it in a drum rack. So it's just accessible. It's just easy to just hit the square and hear it, But it depends. I could just get in real precise with the mouse too if I just need, I guess less quantity or something.
So let's walk through real quick, building a drum beat. Once you get the rhythm, how do you manipulate the sound? Or do you manipulate the sound even before put down the MIDI?
Yeah, a little both. I mean, a little of both. I got to get it to a point where I don't hate it. I have to like it a little bit, or it's not staying. Hear it. Yeah, because I can't. Again, I'm trying to have fun making music, and if there's I won't leave loops that hurt my either ears or my creative sensibilities. I can't. So like I'm doing a lot of cleanup as I go, just so I can stay engaged. If I leave things a little too sloppy, I get that those vibes kind of go away. Because it's sloppy. I mean, that's something about. So, yeah, it has to be good enough, I guess, is my answer. And then maybe it'll be looping now, and I can tune it some more. And it's all really depends. But the key is to make sure I still, like we were saying, it has to be something I'm excited about, or it's probably going to get deleted real quick. So it has to be exciting enough to get on the canvas for sure.
What are the main tools that you'd use on whatever it is? A snare drum, would it be obviously EQ?
I don't do a ton of processing on my snare.
Okay, it's really what about kicks?
Finding a same thing. I really don't want to over process those things. They're really key elements in the song. You want a really clean kick and snare on, but definitely like typical stuff, EQing them and getting it right, but not I don't have a whole lot of like, oh, I always use this exciter on my snare. Some guys are like that. I think if you find a clean enough sample, you shouldn't have to do too much to make it sound right. If that's going to be better at the end to start with the best sound.
What about
just
like
tuning them is important. Getting them in key. You don't think to tune your drums. I think that's a big deal. They're an instrument too. They're not atonal. It sounds like they are sometimes, but if you hear a difference of a song where the kick and sub are tuned to each other and a different song where they're not, it's like night and day. Like for me at least to hear that. So tuning, and other than that, I don't go too crazy with those, but you do have to find the right sample or make the right sample.
I'm glad you bring up the tuning of the digital instrument or the drum.
Yeah.
Because I don't think not everybody focuses on that.
Right. Like you might, sometimes you're like, this kick just isn't hitting very good. And so you're turning it up in volume. Really, it's just hitting the wrong note sometimes. You'd be surprised how much better the speaker reacts to a tuned kick. So it's the science of what, like for kids getting into it that can't figure out, or people older, they can't figure out why things aren't sounding right. You got to get to the base, like science of sound. Study like mix engineering. Why engineers decide to do what they do, not just learning what they do, but learning the why about music engineering. It's so much more you have to learn, but then you're not stuck copying a technique for a scenario. Now you know why you would use a certain technique, and you can become an audio engineer. I'm not going to come here and say I'm like a professional audio engineer, but by studying the why of audio engineering, that's the key. Because I'll see people watch tutorials, how to make a kick fat, or and you'll learn some of the why from a good tutorial, but just study why. Like just study why why would you tune a kick? Like that right there is a Google rabbit hole that could take someone a whole night. Why tune a kick? Like that would just encourage new producers to Google the why on all these different techniques and things. And then you'll understand the technique from the ground up. You won't just be able to say, oh, this mix engineer does this with his kicks and it sounds good. You'll go, well, mix engineers do this with kicks because the speaker reacts a certain way because, there's tons of becauses in there. Sounds very complicated, but that's the trick. It's getting to the science of it, not just copying techniques, is going to be like a long-term strategy for a producer, I think.
There's a great this is, I think, a technique, but also down to science of, I heard recently, and that is mixing in mono.
Oh, okay.
And then stereo separating it. Because then, the sub is in mono, everything's in mono. So you're getting all the, interference that you might get on a subpar sound system, like in a restaurant or something, where there's only one speaker above you that's playing mono, or at a bar or something. So there's plenty of venues, in the loose sense of the term, that are like play music, like a coffee shop.
Yeah.
But those, you're not getting a great sound picture, and you can't assume that your listener's always going to have the best equipment. Mm-hmm. So it's just an interesting technique, but it really goes back to the science of it and the constructive and destructive interference.
Yes.
And mastering that and figuring out what's going on and what's conflicting.
Mixing in mono is something a lot of people do. Mixing on different systems, including non-pro audio systems. Like when you think your mix is in a good spot and you've mixed it on your monitors, let's say, okay, come back to it a few hours later on headphones. Okay, did it pass that test? Okay, play it in your car. Like, okay, play it on your cell phone with the headphones unplugged on that little crappy speaker on full blast. Compare that to other songs that sounded kind of okay on your cell phone. It's like they're seeing your mix correctly. No matter which angle you listen to it, you're getting a piece of the picture, because you're not going to be playing your shows out on your studio monitors. So it's like you're always going to be looking. It's like there's an analogy for it with like truth itself. It's like you're always looking. It's like a chandelier on the other side of it is the truth, but you're always looking at it through a different angle, and it's kind of obscured a different way from each angle. So if you look at different angles, you can get a higher resolution idea of the truth or of a good mix. You're never going to get a perfect mix. It's an unobtainable thing. But the more angles you decide to listen to it at, the better shot you have at hearing it correctly. And not blasting your ears out. Like it gets into like the science of the human ear too. Like, have you been listening to this song for 3 hours at the same volume? You can't do that. I mean, okay, you can, but there's drawbacks. There are anatomic drawbacks to doing that. And you need to understand the science of your eardrum. For me, that's been a struggle because I love when my headphone like physically hits my ear with bass. I don't know if you know, like there's that level of bass in a headphone where it's like, pfft. I'm too obsessed with it, and it's really bad for my ear health. Like, you really have to give your ear a break, and you have to. I've heard some people say every 20 minutes you need to change the volume level, at least 2 or 3 dB. Huh. I don't know if that's. I don't know all the evidence behind that technique and all this, but just at least taking into consideration ear health.
Oh yeah.
Like, I've started wearing earplugs at shows.
Oh yeah, same here.
I mean, like. Yeah, I like to hear it loud too, but I mean, I want to hear it loud the rest of my life.
Exactly. Like, I like the music, but I also want to like the music at age whatever, whatever I make it to.
Yeah, and if I was like a craftsman with my hands, I wouldn't want to smash my hands up every night with a hammer. If my ear is my main tool, I don't want to blow it out every night. I will be a bad musician. I won't be able to hear my music anymore. So guarding your ear health, I've already made a lot of mistakes there, and I'm like paying the consequences. And at least I'm young enough to see now that I should slow that down. And you're
young enough to make that difference.
And hope, I haven't done too much damage, I think, yet. And I still have bad habits. Like, I still really need to turn it down. Just turn it down. Get used to listening to your music quieter. I think it's important for young musicians because we love, especially with bass music. I mean, we love to hear that bass and all this stuff. For some kids, like even me, I might need to get like the sub pack. You know, a lot of producers are using things like haptic feedback type. Like, you put the sub pack, it hits you with the sub frequency in your back. So you don't feel like you have to turn the headphones up to the point where you feel the bass. You know, so I haven't used that technique. I've heard some producers say it was really helpful to produce with. You should be careful. I mean, I could see people getting their bass mix completely wrong. If you start with a sub pack and your bass sounds super big, and then you play it on a speaker.
I wonder if there's a latency, or does it only send the low frequencies?
My understanding is it's like just the low frequencies, and it's ranges for that, and it's no latency. But I actually haven't tried them out yet. Yeah. Heard good things, but
I've heard good things too.
Guarding ear health. A lot of people don't take it seriously enough, including myself for a long time.
It's important.
Yeah, change, and it's an important technique for you to hear. Make sure you're hearing it right. Like, that's the thing. Your body gets used to things that happen to it. Your ears get used to certain sounds happening. If I've listened to something for too long, sometimes I stop hearing bad frequencies in a certain instrument, and if I come back to them, like, what is that ringing or whatever?
Yeah, how did I not notice that?
Yeah, I probably was listening for too long at the same volume. Like, take into account that like when you come back to it fresh, it's more accurate, I think. And it's part of the technique. Like, taking breaks, but staying, like, keeping at it, like keeping at the track or whatever you're working on, but definitely giving yourself breaks is not just important for your mental health, but for the accuracy of your ear.
And when you take a break, do you listen to other tracks, or do you just turn it to 0?
I like to get quiet. Yeah.
And take a moment, get some water, and then come back to it.
Yeah, like walking, like getting out of where I am, changing scenery is nice. Sometimes it's freezing cold outside or something, and you just minimize the program or something and stretch or something. Yeah, like, we're just not robots. We're not designed to sit in front of computers for too long. Our bodies were not meant for that, and our bodies don't respond well to that. Just keeping all that in mind. And this, like, if I'm in the creative part of a track and it starts to feel like work to keep going, just take a break. Like, take a break. If you come back to it, a lot of times it'll be more fun again. That negativity kind of can go away, and you'll have a little fresher consciousness to come back to it too. You know, when things get repetitive, my mind doesn't get too happy. And making electronic music can get really repetitive. So just put more input in there. But and sometimes maybe I'll listen to some music, but generally it's good to I like to just go quiet for a while and do something else for a little
outside,
bit. Even just do like a stupid chore or something just to split it up.
So wrapping up here.
Yeah.
But you've talked about how you're always curious as a kid, and even now curious, how do they make that? I wonder, how do they slide between the notes when you're talking about trance as a kid?
When I was a kid, wondering all these different sounds.
Yeah.
That's why I got into computer music. I think was no one could explain to me what those sounds were,
and so you had to do it yourself.
I wanted to just know. Yeah, I wanted to see like exactly how it was made.
And once you got the software, where do you start? Let's say you listen to a song, you're like, wow, that was cool. I would love to be able to make something like that just for learning's sake as a kid. How do you start?
Well, I started with that free program Mad Tracker. So I had been listening to trance music. Like it would randomly play. I didn't even have much in my library because I didn't know much of it. But I would hear like Tycho was a really early influence. One of my cousins put some Tycho songs on my flip phone, and I was listening to these, and they use a lot of square wave synths with tons of reverb, and they even kind of detune them a little bit.
And how do you know that?
Now I know it, right? Because
you've got that ear.
I dove in, and now I can go, oh, that's a square wave, and you just and they're really like they have nice finesse with their effects. I think that's where I realized later on, like, oh, he just put enough detuning. He put enough reverb. Because when I was a kid, I would think, oh, it's reverb. I was 100% on the reverb.
Yeah, all or none.
Okay, that's not it. But yeah, so like I had heard these synths and I had no idea how those sounds came about. I had heard some keyboard, you play on like a keyboard with different sound presets, and okay, but that didn't tell me where it came from, really. And
you can't quite get there with the presets.
So you just hit a button and that's the sound on a lot of those keyboards. And so I like those, just the ones for playing. And then I downloaded this program, Mad Tracker, and it's basically just a host for plugins. It doesn't really have any samples. There's nowhere to put audio. It has to be MIDI and it has to be a plugin. So there was this synth on there it was like a super wave synth. It was like a saw wave mostly synth, but you could change it to different waves, and it had like it was like a pretty, now I realize that it's just a typical synthesizer, but as a kid it was like all these parameters, each one. Sometimes I would turn a knob and it would go quiet and I couldn't get any sound out of it, and I'm like, okay, whoa, what am I doing?
What happened?
Each knob one at a time. Over years I finally just learned. I was silly because I probably could have Googled and learned a lot of them quicker, but I just played with them for a while out of boredom when I was a kid, realized kind of what these knobs did, and
through experimentation.
Yeah, like playing around, and then I would watch some tutorials, and eventually there came a time like when I was a young adult, like 17, 18, where I started to get the concept of a synth and get the idea of these tools and more of a bottom-up understanding of how they worked. But yeah, it really just started from curiosity. I liked how the sounds made me feel in ways I didn't know how to articulate, but I loved how they made me feel. There was a vibe to it, and there was a mystery, and I've always been a really curious person. So I just got on my one computer I had access to and put this software on it, started changing knobs on this little VST. Pretty soon started to kind of get it over a few years, and then it started to be fun. I kind of started to, have friends that were making music and opportunities to play little DJ sets or whatever, and it kind of came pretty clear, like, this is fun. Like, I see, whether I'm good at it or not, I seem to have fun doing it. So that's kind of how it played out. But yeah, it was an interesting curiosity from some of these artists that were kind of pushing boundaries for their time. I feel like the music I was listening to from Tycho was a huge boundary push it was like a rock band with all these ambient sounds and crazy. So yeah, it just got me really, really curious, and I was bored. I mean, I had a lot of time on my hands back then, so
and
it added up.
With all these tools, I mean, there really is no bottom, or there's no ceiling. It's pretty infinite. I mean, as far as with the confines of the human hearing range.
True.
But it's quite infinite of what kind of sounds you can make. But you are very disciplined and thoughtful with what sounds you decide to release, and the combination of sounds as well, like in a song, are cohesive. And I'm just curious, with all this infinite possibility, where are there any tools or techniques that you use to chop away the fat, so to speak?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's been my most, well, how should I say this? That's been one of the real big challenges, because there's not like a real simple answer to that. The main technique is the one we mentioned, where how excited was I really when I heard that? Really get honest, because sometimes you're like, it's pretty cool, but do I want a pretty cool song? No, delete it or change it. But keep staying honest, because the ego will say, no, you made that and that's pretty cool. You're cool, bro. Like, that's cool. Keep it. It's pretty cool. I make pretty cool stuff sometimes, but I want to make really cool stuff all the time. Kind of setting the bar high and sticking to it, and knowing that, like, yeah, maybe the track won't come out for a lot longer because of that. But what you'll put out at the end, I think you'd be more proud of.
And how do you keep that confidence once, because eventually there will be something that just doesn't meet your high bar. And so you've got to let it go. But how do you tell yourself, oh, that was that song. This song's different. Or this song's going to be different.
I mean, it's tough because it's a lot of subconscious feelings that you're using to guide you. There's not an analytical way to calculate if it's good or not, because it's just music. There's nothing really logical about music. Like, you can't hardly come up with a logical reason to make music other than, like, I just love it and people love it. We all do this. It's an interesting reaction to the dilemma of life, actually. That's one logical thing of it. It's like, screw it, let's dance. Yeah, all this is crazy and we don't understand it, but why don't we just have some fun and dance to music and feel some cool stuff? So to an extent, there's logic behind it, but I mean, because the sounds I choose not to keep in, there's plenty of different types of synths where I'm like, nah, I just don't want it. And I've seen other artists keep them, and similar type sounds that I've discarded and work amazing. I mean, especially in their song or set. Yeah. It's all context and stuff, but I don't know. I like, I've always liked really lush pads. I've always liked really smooth lead synths that aren't very loud, really. They're there. You don't want them to sink in the background, but there's just a certain sound that I've really aligned with. Again, like we were saying earlier, I think it has a lot to do with like the Enya and these different types of music that were just playing as my mind was growing when I was super young. And I just have to stick with that. That's kind of my like compass or my way of seeing what's good. And that's all I'm going to get. And I just need to stick with that and keep rediscovering that. And it can evolve and new types of sounds can become acceptable. That's totally fine. I don't want to keep myself on sounding like I'm making the same song over and over again. That can happen too. So being honest about how excited I am and remembering to just get rid of social ego type influences, and then it just gets clearer. Like, nah, I just don't like that sound. It's okay. Other people do. I don't. Delete. Move on. That gets refined. It's been getting refined for me over the years because I've gone down crazy paths with my music, and I've found myself back here sounding with a sound that's got a lot of hints from my childhood and things I liked when I was young. So there's no quick answer. That's like my shortest possible answer. It's probably like good. 50 sentences.
That's all good. That's great. Yeah. Well, Aric, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us and talk and share your thoughts and wisdom. So I really appreciate your time and wish you all the best.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.
Freio Music. You are listening to Freio Music.